Welcome to the County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives, hosted by County Manager Scott Johnson. This podcast is your behind-the-scenes look at what's happening in county government and across our community. We'll talk about the services, projects, and decisions that make Columbia County a great place to live. We're glad you're here. Thanks for listening to the County Compass. Now, here's Scott Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the County Compass. We are so excited to be able to launch Columbia County's first podcast, to be able to tell our residents in the county and around the community and other places around the country what's happening in Columbia County. So I really want to start today in this first episode with how did we get here? Columbia County is always looking for ways to communicate with its citizens. We want to make sure that we give you everything we have and give you as much information as we have. And, you know, we strive to do the best at everything we do. For those of you that may be unfamiliar with Columbia County, give us a look. Columbia County was named named the best place to live in America in 2020, and that really has become something that we're very proud of, and also something that has brought more and more people to our community. So check out Columbia County if you don't live here, but this is really for our citizens. I want to let you know what's going on behind the scenes, and as we strive to do the best at everything we do, we want to tell you what's going on. We're definitely going to fall short sometimes, and I'm sure people will point that out to us, but we are blessed to live in a community like Columbia County. We have great schools, we have low crime, just really an amazing quality of life, and I'm really glad to call this place home. So why a podcast? Well, one lesson we learned during Hurricane Helene was that the public was really starving for information. For those of you that may not know, a hurricane hit our community in, end of September, early October 2024, and it completely changed our landscape in so many ways. Think about the landscape itself. I mean, obviously our trees are gone, things are different, nothing looks the same as it used to look. We spent millions and millions of dollars and man hours on cleanup in the county, trying to get our county back to what it once was. But regardless how you look at it, it changed the landscape. It also changed the landscape with how we communicate. We are very blessed to have a good PR team here, led by our PR director, Cassidy Harris. And she, during the hurricane, had just added a member of her team. Chris Lloyd, who does our production, who is helping us with this podcast, was here and was able to provide video for us and professional video for us, and it really just changed the way that we were able to communicate. But let's go back to the hurricane itself. So I remember coming in on the very first day of the hurricane, and the county was what I would say really devastated in a lot of ways. I had to cut my way to work. I had to figure out the best way to get there. Trees were down all over the place. Power was out to all of our residents. I believe it was 99% of our residents were without power. Over 99% were without power. And what we didn't know at that time is that was probably going to last for a long time. For us, it was, for me personally, at my house, 14 days with no power. I know a lot of other citizens went longer. Some people went shorter. But regardless, it was a very, very difficult time for our county and a dark time for our county. And we were really trying to figure out, first of all, how do we get people cut out of their yards, and how do we make sure everyone's safe, and how do we get police and fire, or sheriff's office and fire and EMS to people's residences. So that became our first order of business, and it took us a couple of days to do that, but I'm very proud to report that by the hurricane came in on a Thursday night into Friday morning, and by Monday morning, all of our roads were at least passable in Columbia County, thanks to the help of our folks in Roads and Bridges and really all county employees that came out to help cut people out. So we were at least passable at that point. But I'll never forget, we were in the Emergency Operations Center, and I was talking to my PR director. We were talking to the entire team, just trying to figure out ways to be proactive and get things out. And we said, we've got to tell our citizens something about what's going on. There are a lot of people that are scared. They're uncertain. They don't know what's happening in the community. We've got to get the word out to them. And we decided the best way to do that was on our social media platforms. Again, no power, no internet, most of the county. Our grocery stores were closed. Our gas stations were closed. We had to be able to get information about how people could get to a hospital or where they could get the bare necessities if they didn't have those things. We had to get that word out. And we just decided that social media was the best. So why is that? Well, if the power's out, you can't watch your TV, right? And if the internet is out or the cable's out, then you're not going to be able to watch it there. Radio stations in the very beginning were actually down as well, so we couldn't go to our local radio station and try to broadcast anything there. They were dealing with the fallout of the hurricane. So we decided to go social media route, and I started recording updates from different places around the county. The first one started, I believe, right in the parking lot of the Emergency Operations Center. And I made a pledge to our citizens that I would come back and do as many updates as I could to try to keep people as informed as I possibly could about what was happening during that hurricane. We knew that people were going to have a hard time getting internet, but if they had a cell signal, we knew that they were going to reach for their phone first, like most of us do. I think that's really the way society has come these days, as we pick up our phone for our news and for our source of information, or a tablet, or whatever the case may be. So we started doing these Facebook videos, and we started doing more and more and more of them, and we got a lot of really good feedback on that. And I say all that to say that it really taught us a lesson that during these trying times, we need to communicate well with our citizens. And that really led to another conversation about how do we do this on a regular basis? You know, should I do a Facebook update every week, or should I do some sort of other social media update? And we started kicking around the idea about this podcast and putting stuff out there so we could talk about the timely things happening in Columbia County. So that's really how this was born. Really was an opportunity for us to be able to talk to the public and not really use the typical social media outlets to be able to do that. I'm going to get back to social media in a little while, but I really want to talk about trying to understand why so many people misunderstand. We hear that a lot in county government, and I get it, to the point that, you know, if you're not here and you're not in the meetings and you're not behind the scenes, maybe you don't know. Maybe we take that for granted that people really understand what's going on in their community. So I really wanted to understand why so many people misunderstand. Dr. Thomas Sowell is probably one of the greatest intellectual minds of our time. This man, born in maybe 1935, early 1930s, he's written over 40 books and thousands of articles. He's worked in some of the best institutions of higher learning, including Cornell University, and his thoughts are widely distributed and often quoted. Yet a lot of people say, I've never heard of Dr. Thomas Sowell. If you haven't, I would encourage you to go out and look at some of his writings, and there are lots of podcasts out there about him as well. But very, very, very interesting man, and you may be surprised when you start digging into what Dr. Sowell has done and said. You may be surprised at what you find. But one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Sowell actually inspired me to do this podcast. He once pointed out, he said, the reason that so many people misunderstand so many issues is not that the issues are complex, but that people do not want a factual or analytical explanation that leaves them emotionally unsatisfied. They want villains to hate and heroes to cheer, and they don't care for explanations that don't give them that. Folks, that's what our society's kind of come to now, and that's not a poke at anybody. I think Dr. Sowell has it exactly right, that people want their heroes they can cheer on. They want somebody to blame. They want a villain to blame in situations. And the facts just kind of get in the way. People have already made their mind up about certain things and certain ideas, and that's really one of the reasons why we want to do this podcast, was to be able to give you the truth, and maybe we could change your opinion on something if it was just absolutely based on non-factual information or information that was wrong. We do live in a society where people will try to get their opinions out there and maybe throw it against the wall just to see if it sticks, and then go from there. People have political motivations. We work in a political environment, in a political world, and people sometimes draw their lines that way. We have political affiliations. You're either on one side of the aisle or on the other side of the aisle, and I think our country is more divided than it's ever been, really since the Civil War, which is a little bit disturbing. But our country's divided. We're very much divided down political lines right now, and I hate to see that. And as somebody that's apolitical by code, as your county manager, my responsibility is to govern in the best way possible and to provide leadership for our staff to be able to provide services for our citizens in a fair and impartial manner, and we try to do that. But, going back to Dr. Sewell's quote, what he's really saying here is that the days of Walter Cronkite are over. Now, some of our younger listeners are not even going to know who Walter Cronkite is. This was a man that reported the news and was very famous for his accurate reporting of news and putting the facts out there. It was non-biased. It was just giving you the truth, getting on the news every night in front of a camera and telling the country this is what's going on. And then you were left to decide what you thought about that, right? The facts were the facts, but you were left to then decide how you were going to process that and what you thought about that. But it's not that way anymore. Today in our society, a lot of us choose our news channels based on our political affiliations. And maybe you hadn't thought about that. But, depending on who you voted for, you may watch this news station as opposed to this news station. And the reason those things were born that way is because there's so much slant and there's so much bias in the media that people felt like they needed to get their message out. So they started news outlets really according to political affiliations. This is my opinion, but based on political affiliations. And you'll see that depending on how you may vote at the ballot box will depend on which news you like to consume. Or maybe you watch the other side just to hear what they're saying and get ammunition to be able to fire up your social media posts later on. But now everything, I believe, is slanted. Well, not everything. Let's don't say that. Lots of things are slanted towards sensationalism, towards the headline, towards the tagline, towards making people click. We've all heard of clickbait, putting something out there that's going to make somebody really want to know what's behind that. So we have a lot of that these days out there. And really and truly, it's not the public's fault. We have conditioned ourselves in society today to have immediate information. Everything is at your fingertips. When I was growing up, we had to go to the library to pull books out. I remember my parents, when I was very young, getting the updates from the encyclopedia being shipped to the house so I could go back and read the encyclopedia. And you had to get the updates because, things are changing as history is making itself. Things are changing, so I'd always be very excited to get the updates to find out the things that are going on around the world. We don't wait for that anymore. Now, when we get up, first thing we do in the morning is we grab our phone or our tablet, and we scroll our favorite news outlets or we scroll our favorite social media, and we find out what's going on. And we find it out in real time. Now, that's good and bad. It's good that we know what's going on around us, but it's bad that a lot of this stuff hasn't been vetted. A lot of this stuff is just being put out there, again, being thrown against the wall to see if it sticks. And unfortunately, people, when they see that, when they hear that, they think that's accurate. We see that a lot in Columbia County. I hear people talk about things that are happening in Columbia County, and maybe people will throw something out there, and then we have to combat that. We'll have our local news stations call us, and let me just say, we have a great partnership with our local news stations. We try to give them as much information as they need. Our local press, whether it be online or whether it be printed, we treat all of our media the same, and our PR director does a great job of working with them. But sometimes we find out that our story doesn't get out there, and it may be because it's not sensational enough. Again, that's just my opinion on that. I heard one time, good news doesn't sell. Right? We need a good scandal. We need bad news. That's really what gets people excited about doing this. And we have to sell ads, and we have to support ourselves and those sort of things. So, again, very much opinion as it relates to that. But I'm trying to set the stage as to why we would want to do a podcast for you to get information straight from the source. So let's talk a little bit about the social media piece. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say that I don't have any social media. If you look for me on social media, on Facebook or on Instagram or even LinkedIn. I don't even have a LinkedIn anymore. I used to have a LinkedIn. I don't have one anymore. I don't have social media. And that's a decision that I made because I found myself being influenced by people that I just didn't feel like should be influencing me in the job that I do for the folks in Columbia County. Whether you realize it or not, you are being influenced sometimes by the vocal minority. And I was quoted one time as saying that I would rather be persecuted for standing up for the I'd rather be persecuted for standing up for the silent majority than cowing down to the vocal minority. And that we have a lot of that these days. We have a lot of people that are just, very vocal in their thing, and that's fine. We live in a free country. You have free speech. You can say or do anything you want to do. The problem that I have with it is if it's not true, there are few consequences. We allow people to post things on social media based on or with anonymity. You don't even know who they are. They're not even responsible for what they're saying. They put something out there, and then people follow that, and they comment on that, and it becomes a big issue in our community. And you can't even go to the source to see if it's true. My own mother, who is now gone on to heaven, I'll never forget. She called me one time, and she was a big Facebook user, and she called me one time, and she said, Scott, I can't believe you did X, Y, Z, and I don't remember what it was. It was something she read on Facebook that somebody that doesn't care for me wrote. And she said, I raised you better than that, and I can't believe you did that, and I'm really disappointed. I said, Mama, do you really believe that? Do you really believe what you just read to me? And she said, well, I'm finding it hard to believe, but, it was on Facebook, and there's so many people that have commented on it, and it's such a thing. And what she did was she allowed that lie to become reality in her mind just based on where she got the information. And she discounted the fact that it wasn't vetted. No publisher or editor looked at it. It was just somebody's opinion, and it was somebody that didn't like me, and they could say anything they wanted to say about me. And I found when I was on social media, I used to read those things all the time. So I've made the decision to completely get off of social media. I don't have it at all. And the bad part about that is I can't communicate with friends and family the way that I maybe used to when I had social media. But you know what it's caused me to do? It's caused me to get closer to my friends and family that really matter. And be able to have open dialogue face-to-face or be able to make a phone call or those sort of things and not really rely on putting my life out there for everybody to see and then, being attacked and those sort of things. So I could go on and on and on about that. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on that other than to say you have to be careful where you get your information. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast. We want you to hear this straight from the source. We don't want to filter it. We don't want to alter it. We want to give you the information. Now, I'm not naive. I realize there are going to be times that I'm going to have to sit in this chair and deliver information that's uncomfortable. There are going to be times that I'll have guests in the studio that may not be friends of mine. They may be opponents in some way, shape, or form. They may have differing opinions. But you know what? That's what makes America what it is. We can have differing opinions. We just need to make sure that we're respectful about that. And then, again, we put the information out. So there are going to be times on this podcast, if you continue to listen, if you choose to continue to listen to this, there are going to be times that are going to be tough. But we're not going to alter the truth. We're not going to stray from the truth. We're going to tell you truly what's going on behind the scenes in Columbia County. If you have a story idea, you can reach out to our PR director and let us know, and we can look at that and potentially do a podcast on that. I think we have plenty of things to talk about right now. But as a community, if there's things that you want to hear, we want to hear from you. So make sure that you tune in, listen, be engaged in your community. And that's really what it's about. It goes back to Dr. Sowell's quote, and I really want to just focus on this for just a minute, and then we'll wrap up this introductory episode. But, he was talking about people want heroes to cheer and villains to hate. And so many times local government or government period becomes your villain to hate. We don't get to be your heroes except in time of need. During the hurricane, I think we were able to show how much we care about the community, and we work really hard, and we worked around the clock, and we were able to provide the services needed for our community to be able to get out of that very, very difficult time. I know some of you have that was a life altering for you. I mean, you know, maybe you didn't have insurance, and I'm sure there are people still to this day struggling. But the county did our best to be able to provide the services that we are really obligated to provide you. And you know, in that darkest hour, we came out as a hero, and people loved the county that they lived in for that brief moment. We can go back to 9/11. I can remember 9/11, 2001, when the planes hit the tower. Didn't matter what your political affiliation was. It didn't matter which god you worshipped. It didn't matter what part of the town you lived in. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor. Only thing that mattered during that time is whether or not you were an American. And Americans came together, and they prayed together, and they worshiped together, and they held each other's hands. And they did all the things that they came together through tragedy. And there were a lot of heroes that were born out of that. But let's get back to the villain side. Local government is really a great place, I guess, to look for villains. It pains me sometimes to see some of our public servants that work really hard, and I watch how hard they work to be vilified on social media, to have things said about them that we know are not true, or that I personally know are not true, for people to be accused of things. And, you know, some people ask me sometimes, they say, Scott, why don't you put a stop to some of the things people say about you? Why don't you sue people, or why don't you, do this or do that? Well, first of all, I just told you I'm not on social media. So for those of you that are talking bad about me on social media, I'm likely not to see it. I'm likely not to hear it unless somebody sends it to me, and that's my choice. So I will continue to do that. But the real reason that we don't do something about it, so to speak, is because as public officials, we're held to a higher standard. You're allowed to talk about us to a certain extent and say anything you want to say. Now, there have been people that have crossed the line, and there are people that are very near the line on a regular basis, and we've chosen not to address those things. But when you start talking about my personal business, or if you start talking about and I say personal business, I'm not talking about in a business sense. I'm talking about, maybe where I go to church or those types of things. That starts getting a little bit over the line. You start talking about my family members, that hurts a little bit more. But all those things you're allowed to do and you're allowed to say, so we don't say anything about that. Where it really becomes an issue, where people really cross the line, is when you start saying things that are not factual, that you know are not factual, that you are saying for the sole purpose to hurt the individual you're saying them about. And you're making that up. So we see a lot of that. We see a lot of that in local government, but that goes back to Dr. Sewell talking about we all want villains to hate. And sometimes I have the benefit and the honor of being the guy that did great things for Columbia County and people recognizing that. But more often, I'm the guy that gets blamed for everything that happens in Columbia County. So that being said, we are going to do our best to try to at least tell you the truth. And if you want to continue to hate us after that, then there's not a whole lot I can do about that. But you will get the truth on this podcast. Why the compass? We really wanted to come up with kind of a cool idea about how to roll this out, and the compass and the points became important to us. A lot of you know our logo is a sailboat in Columbia County, and we've talked about that. Should we update that? But it's so ingrained in what we do here. We decided to go with a nautical theme here, and there's something special about True North. It doesn't change. It's always there. You have to find it sometimes, and sometimes you can stray off course. But if you can ever figure out where True North is, you can also figure out where South and East and West are, and then you can determine where you need to go based on the fact that you've established that original point. And that's why we use the county compass. That's what we're doing here. We're establishing a True North. We're establishing the truth about what's happening in Columbia County, and then from there you can decide to go however you want to go. But certainly we want to be able to provide information to you, once again, unaltered, straight from the source. So with that, before we wrap up, I want to let you know that, again, this is the first introductory episode of the County Compass here in Columbia County. I want you to always stay to the end, and don't just fast forward to the end. Try to listen to the information and hear what's happening in your community, but always stay to the end, because I'm going to try something that I've never really tried before. I'm going to, on each one of these podcasts, at the end of the podcast, I'm going to end with revealing the most ridiculous thing that I've heard about our community lately. And folks, there are a lot of ridiculous things that I've heard about our community, I can just tell you. But I want to tell you those things so you can know and you can hear straight from me the truth about one of the most ridiculous things I've heard. So this week, one of the most ridiculous things that I've heard is that Columbia County sold every piece of property that a gas station vendor is building or has bought and is building in Columbia County. So there's a certain gas station chain. I'm not going to go into the chain. I'm not going to try to name things here. By the way, we are not sponsored by anybody. We are doing this in-house. Our production's in-house. We're not paying an outside source to do that. We don't have ads. We don't have anything like that. So I'm going to do my best to try to not mention names if I can, but you can all figure it out. I was told that somebody said that Columbia County sold all of the property to a businessman, and he then put gas stations on all those properties, and they were owned by the county. That is absolutely ridiculous. First of all, we wouldn't do that anyway. Second of all, the county can't even sell land. We don't have the ability to sell land like a private person does. The county has to surplus property, and it would have to go through a bid process. So we do have a development authority, and there are ways that we can go about acquiring it and getting rid of land through our development authority. But the county itself does not do that. And in this case, the county did not do that. The county had nothing to do with that. And a lot of times people want to blame the county for allowing this to go there, or not allowing this to go here, or, hey, Columbia County, why don't you stop allowing so many of this type of business and start putting in these types of businesses? Folks, all we do is the zoning. We don't get to say who goes on if it's already zoned a commercial piece of property and somebody wants to do a business there that meets the zoning, they come in and let us know what they're building there, and then they start building. And of course they have to build that to code. But the whole idea of attracting, we can do our best to try to attract business. I know there's a lot of businesses we like to see, and we've worked hard on trying to attract some of those to the county and trying to diversify our tax base a little bit. But we don't get to say who goes where. We don't get to pick your favorite fast food restaurant and then locate it on the corner that you want it to go on. The county doesn't have the ability to do that. So just wanted to say it's absolutely ridiculous that anybody would think that the county would sell land to a local developer all over the county in different places for them to be able to put gas stations in or convenience stores in. Absolutely untrue, and in my mind, absurd. But to a lot of the folks that commented on the post, they believed it. And, even though they wrongfully believed it, I go back to my mom. She wrongfully believed it too. So we'll do our best to try to tell you the truth on everything. We'll make sure that we try to give you the information, again, straight from the source. It is our goal to try to drop a podcast weekly. That may change based on the demands of things that are going on around the county, but it truly is our goal to make sure that we tell you what's happening in Columbia County, Georgia, and we keep you up to date the very best we can. So make sure you tune in next time to hear the real story behind the things going on in Columbia County. And until then, I'm glad to call Columbia County home, and I hope those of you that live here are too. Take care.
This has been The County Compass, Columbia County's guide to news, voices, and perspectives. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you taking the time to stay informed about the issues, initiatives, and people impacting our community. And we sincerely hope today's conversation helps you better understand the work being done in Columbia County. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. As always, visit Columbia County's official website or social media channels for additional information. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.